can we, in the midst of our daily lives, how can we elevate our minds to the point of a closer experience of spiritual enlightenment, I think is a question before us. Because, of course, these Wednesday evenings are originally to do with question answer sessions. But I'll answer in the framework of our theme, because today is the birthday of Swami Subodhananda and tomorrow Swami Vijnanananda. These are both prominent disciples, the inner circle disciples, monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. And I suppose the first thing is, why do we study such things? First of all, because we see a technique. The question is, how can we, ordinary people, so-called, elevate our minds? A small side comment. There's no such thing as an ordinary person. We're all extraordinary. I remember sitting in the UK, one student said, oh, it's okay for you, but us ordinary people said, no, we are all extraordinary people. We're extraordinary people in terms of our individuality, our individual moldings, our individual expression, because it's a divine expression. It's as if we were all angels waiting in the heavenly wings to be born, play our drama out, contribute ourselves nicely to this play, and go back to our heavenly realm. That kind of idea. So there's no such thing as ordinary. We are all extraordinary. And the most extraordinary will be when we elevate the mind to the highest level. Now, how to do that? Well, meet a person like Ramakrishna is the obvious answer. That's what would be the theme of today and tomorrow. But do we ever meet such an extraordinary person? The most extraordinary teachers, the model teachers of the world, are often called avatara, those who descended, those who are specifically born, let us say from a cosmic mind or a cosmic balancing power, to adjust things within the world and leave their mark for several thousands of years. In Vivekananda's language, a huge wave in an ocean rises up and sets its influence, its causal influence everywhere, creating its effect, long-lasting effect. But even those disciples have those characteristics and give us a clue to the answer of a question. How does somebody voluntarily do this? The obvious answer is we have to reframe our view of the world. What we see in front is just an interpretation of stuff. It's difficult to get out of it because it has a strong pulling power. And the pulling power is part of the game. If we consider that life is a kind of game, then we'll get it, we'll understand, and if it's a game, we have to play it very well. That means we don't have to get out of any activities in the world. We don't have to retreat, we don't have to go into a monastery or a cave or anything like this. And the two lives which we're about to explore this evening will demonstrate this fact. When Swami Vivekananda came back from the West, he had a campaign, a kind of military strategy for the whole of India that really involved hands-on upliftment of his countrymen who had been under colonial domination one way or the other for over 1,000 years continuously. And it wasn't that in a political sense he was concerned about. He was concerned about the people on the ground who were suffering, who were crying. And he tugged at his heart. And so he realized that a new kind of monastic movement had to be set up that addressed this in a hands-on way, providing medical facilities, educational facilities, relief facilities of various kinds, being involved in drought relief, in famine relief, and so on. And even when there are plagues, you enter into it fully, knowing that life is fleeting, you may as well leave your mark. So there's no doubt that there are some remarkable lives, these two people in question, who have there's an accumulation, if you like, of spirituality. And when they come into the world, naturally, there's an automatic, natural falling in alignment with what is happening, and an expression of their spirituality comes about. But of course, they themselves have to go through training and discipline. And these two young men, they're young men to begin with. Swami Vijnanananda, whose name is Hari Prasan, he first saw Ramakrishna at the tender age of probably 14 or something. But at the age of, let's say, 15, 16, he has a significant encounter. And it's interesting to see the way a great, great personality like Ramakrishna deals with two different types of people. So we have to acknowledge, firstly, we're all different, and we require different medicine. Just like in a family, one person requires this kind of food, another person requires that kind of food. So requiring these different kinds of food, a good mother will cook what is suitable for individual children's digestion. Now, one example that I'm jumping here, I'm not putting anything in a sequence, but Hari Prasan was well built. He was well known to be a good wrestler. And Ramakrishna, and I am always amused at the incident, he was a very frail, delicate person, a very smooth, delicate body, a small person in comparison to Hari Prasan. And he provokes him. He says, "Come on, let's wrestle." And of course, Hari Prasan pushes him against the wall or something like that, dominates him, defeats him. And Ramakrishna says, "Okay, you won." But the touch of the master transforms his life. And the mark that you see from Ramakrishna is his love, his absolute undying special love that he has. When he first meets these young boys, first of all, he's treating them as if he's known them all his life in an intimate way, not standing as a teacher aloof, but showing so much love and concern, genuine love and concern, to the point that when Hari Prasan doesn't come back to Dakshinaswar from time to time, Ramakrishna goes looking for him. He goes sending people, asking, "Why? When are you coming? Why aren't you coming?" And Hari Prasan comes, and he said, "Well, quite frankly, I'm not often in the mood to come." This is human. You know, when you talk about the obstacles to meditation, one of the most common obstacles is, I'm not in the mood. So how do we create a mood? We have to artificially create a mood. Chanting, singing. Above all, in our daily life, having a view of the world which is not reliant on simply what we see. There has to be a much deeper understanding of it. We have to get away from material reductionism, which has become a kind of style, a kind of a phase, if you will, lasting several hundreds of years now, in the West anyway, and see the deeper realizations and truths that ancient people, and we follow Vedanta because this discovery of the immortal infinite self happens at the foothills of the Himalayas, on the Gangetic plains and so on, in the area of the Saraswati River and so on, in ancient times, Vedic times. And so naturally, we refer to the East because the speciality of India is spirituality. Speciality of a Greek-derived Western culture is materialism. Both are necessary, of course. We have to be practical on the one side and we have to have a deeper insight and practice on the other. And so, not having access to such a remarkable teacher as Ramakrishna, we have at least access to his legacy. And his legacy comes out in the disciples of Ramakrishna, in the various monastic and householder disciples. And when Mahendranath Gupta writes this Gospel of Ramakrishna as it comes out in English, this Kathamritam, this nectar, story of nectar, he is really recording day-to-day conversations on weekends and public holidays. What happens in between? We get a certain insight from these monastic disciples who live with Ramakrishna, who stay with him. His inner circle, please sleep in my room. And in Hari Prasad's case, who becomes Swami Vijnanananda, he is given access to sleeping in this room. And of course, Ramakrishna has a reputation. Reputation is a person who's a madman. When Vijnanananda tells his mother, this is where I've been, his mother makes this remark, oh, please avoid this madman. He has a reputation of madness. And Vijnanananda, of course, understands, yes, it's the right kind of madness. I wish I had this madness. That kind of attitude. The two personalities we're exploring, Subodhananda and Vijnanananda, are different personality types. Firstly, Subodhananda, in order to avoid marrying, he had an inclination of monastic life from very young. And he deliberately prays, please, may I not pass my examination, may I not get a promotion, therefore may I not marry, that kind of approach. And his parents had already encountered Ramakrishna, and Subodh had read the teachings of Ramakrishna that were put out by Suresh Chandra Datta. And he was so impressed, he felt, I have to go and meet this person. And ultimately, when he does, it's a strange encounter. You see, what he does is he enters in Ramakrishna's room, and Ramakrishna says, oh, sit here. Here means on his bed. How can I sit on the bed of a holy man? And don't forget, in his room, 2 beds are there, one for sleeping and one for sitting. How can I even sit on equal terms with such a holy man? And Ramakrishna persuades him, like an old friend, come on, sit. Inquires about his parents, yes, I know them, and so on, all of that. But then you see his encounter with him is of a kind of strange type. He says, he meditates a while, Ramakrishna does, and then he says, you will realize the goal. Now, what is the goal from his point of view, from our point of view? The goal is freedom. It's not freedom from your activities. It's freedom from the consequence of your activities that are not divinely orientated toward the Supreme, what we call God. And so naturally, how do we overcome this? We overcome this by thinking of God day and night, looking for his presence everywhere. And so Swami Subodhananda gives us an inkling of teachings. He says, first take hold of your mind through discrimination. Let's pause there. It's exactly what we are saying. We're saying the world as seen by us has a certain interpretation. We endorse it as reality. We have a certain history. When I was 5, this happened. My father did this. My mother did this. We went on holiday. We did this. We did that. Then I went to school and so on. Now I'm an adult and life is tough. That could be a history like that. Instead of doing that, we have to apply discrimination. What does discrimination mean? It means revaluing the world in front of us, seeing it as a divine expression, a divine play, a play of divine waves. Swami Vijnanananda was a very eccentric looking man, And he used to have a huge long coat with deep pockets and a peculiar looking hat. And he was a spectacle. People used to poke fun at him, laugh at him. He was such a strange apparition. And when he saw people looking at him, he would say, "Yes, I'm just Rama's monkey. That's all." And so he wasn't put off at all by what other people thought about him. He was just simply unaware of the standards and norms that we react to in terms of relating to how other people view us. So people and places and events, they all get revalued by these people to say, "I don't care for that." Why? Because I have a one-tracked mind. My attention is always attached to the divine, the Lord of the universe or the Mother of the universe or whatever your Ishtadevata is. So we first have to apply discrimination. Last week I had a conversation. Somebody here knows who, I won't mention any names, of course. And they were struggling because they were steeped in this idea that I'm a body and mind, I'm a personality struggling through life. No personality, persona means mask, not at all. There's something deep that sits behind it. Please understand that. I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. I have to be the thing which sits and observes all the changes going through the psyche and the physical. What we may say is psychophysical. And when I understand that I'm the unbending, constant witness of this all, perhaps my interpretation of myself, what I call myself, and then the world changes. Our interpretation changes. It's called discrimination. Seeing through the veil, if you like, of the changing series of who get up in the morning, go to bed at night, in between, go to work, do something like this. When you go home, you should be able to cut all that off completely. How so? It's not a cut off exactly. It's that all your activities in the day were nothing more than karma yoga. That is, doing activities without any disturbance of mind, without any anxiety for the effects of all my actions. So this requires a training because we are not systematically trained in this way, although inherently we have some supreme idea. We have some ideal of perfection. That's why we struggle to do our best. The only difficulty is we're doing it within this enclosed field of people and places and events, of things, of circumstances, a waking world in philosophy terms. So first take hold of your mind. See his language. Take hold of your mind through discrimination. Then make it calm through proper training, so that it runs towards the Lord all the 24 hours of the day. Spontaneously runs toward that. Urge the mind on towards the Lord. Then you will understand everything. It requires urging. It requires training. What is that training? The all-powerful Mother of the universe resides in every woman. If one calls on the Lord with sincere earnestness, he reveals himself in the form of one's chosen deity. In order to encapsulate this being, this supreme being that is not easy to relate to on the surface of it, until we recognize, oh, there is a revealed chosen ideal, revealed to me, a specific, unique way of me relating to this entity, which is real, which is revealed by the divine, by a teacher or something like that. So he reveals himself in the form of one's chosen deity. Now you pray to him with utmost devotion and faith, and he will show you the path that leads to him. It's a huge relief. We don't have to worry about it. He will reveal the path to you. He himself will grant everything: devotion, faith, and everything else one needs. Let's look at this. Devotion. I find it difficult to sit down. I sit down, I do the japa, it's a little dry. What's the use of it? I'm told I have to repeat this. So I repeat it. But all the time my mind is going elsewhere. So what do? We ask. You pray to him with utmost devotion and faith. Faith means I trust implicitly that my prayers are answered. If I ask for devotion, I will get it. And if I ask, what is the way? Please show me the path. It will be revealed. Ask and you will receive. Seek and you will find. Knock on the door and it will be answered. These are Jesus' words. And he himself will grant everything, devotion and faith, and all else that one needs, whether it's material needs, whether it is psychological help, whether it is comfort, whether it is health requirements, everything. And when we see the sun, we see it with the sun's own light, he says. No other light is required for that. Thus also we see the Lord through his grace alone. Tulsidas, the great devotee, says that the Lord himself fulfills the desire of one who takes refuge in him. For instance, the fish that has its shelter in water can swim even against the current, while an elephant is washed away by it. One must surrender oneself in the same way likewise. Before the Lord enters the temple of any one of his children's hearts, he fills it with devotion, faith, and love. Just as a king sends different pieces of furniture and vessels to a subject's house which he intends to visit. Else, where can the poor subject get all those things? The Lord himself grants devotion, faith, and love. These three things, just because he will come, they're preparing the way. Now let us think about these three things. Devotion, that is the willingness to offer myself to this being, the willingness to devote my attention to that, the confidence, faith, the confidence that everything will be fulfilled, the future is already written for me, and love. Now, if we talk about love, the one thing that both of these tell us about is the love of the Master, the love of Ramakrishna. And on the Subodhananda's, on Subodh's second visit to Ramakrishna, Ramakrishna strokes him nicely upwards. People recognize, people who study the various systems of the nadis and so on will recognize this surge of energy through an upward stroke, bringing the whole of the coiled up energy, divine energy, upwards to the Vishuddha chakra, as it's called in the yogic language. And there, that has this remarkable effect. Now, that's a transformation for Subodha, who has this vision of a light from there on, and whose whole life gets transformed by the Master's touch. In Hari Prasad's case, it's a little different. He says, Hari Prasad says, quite frankly, I can't meditate. I try to meditate, but it's not working for me. And Ramakrishna says, okay. Then he says he's inviting him to his room to sleep. But the Master is up, and the Master is walking up and down and muttering, and Hari Prasad is quite frankly thinking, perhaps my parents and other people are correct. Perhaps this is a madman. And then he approaches him and he writes something on his tongue. That's Ramakrishna's way of giving Diksha. And then he says, go to the Panchavati and meditate. And he experiences the most sublime meditation ever. And from that day on, he's able to meditate. So we may think, well, that was 100 or more years ago. Jesus was a couple of thousand years ago. It's all very well for people like that. But you see, if Ramakrishna was there physically then, he is there in an incorporeal way here and now. Because actually, historically, we are very proximate to Ramakrishna. If we were Christians, I often say we'd be living in the 2nd century of such a remarkable being. So, this frankness and childlike quality is there with Subodhananda to the point where Vivekananda calls him Koka, means a little child, like an infant, and therefore everybody is calling him Koka, Maharaj. And this innocence is there. I expressed it in a thought today. This childlike quality is there, but also that doesn't mean to say childish. One day the master asked him, "What do you think of me?" The boy unhesitatingly replies, "Many people say many things about you. I won't believe in them unless I myself find clear proofs." And as he became closer and closer in touch with Sri Ramakrishna, the conviction, of course, gradually dawned on him that the master was something like a great savior. So when one day the master asked Subodh to practice meditation, he replied, "I won't be able to do that." This is in contrast to Hari Prasad. He says, "I won't be able to do that. If I'm to do it, why did I come to you? I had better go to some other guru." And Sri Ramakrishna understood the depths of the feeling of the boy and simply smiled. But it didn't mean that Subodha didn't like to meditate. His whole life was one of austerity, prayer, and steadfast devotion. It's only indicated his great confidence in the spiritual powers of the master. Now, Patanjali gives something useful in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. He tells us, translated like this, success is speedy for the highly energetic. Doesn't it apply to anything? If you really want to pass an exam, the more energy you put into it, the greater success and in less time. What is concentration? Concentration is reducing the period until there's a sense of an absence of time. So absorbed are you in one single thing that you don't realize what's happening and what time is there. You can see how Beethoven, for example, was so absorbed in his compositions. He didn't know when he ate or anything like that. His room was a little bit of a mess. It would have horrified people who feel that things should be nice and neat and tidy, and so they should. But you see, he was so absorbed in this, in his musics, that this produced a genius. What is a genius? Somebody who takes the energy inherent that we all have, collects it as it were, and puts it in the direction of a magnificent obsession. If I mention Beethoven, I have to say that he wasn't a particularly religious person. However, he had this connection, and he himself says that he had this particular connection to this Supreme, to this God, while walking in nature. And those people who are great fans of Beethoven, classical music experts, if you will, would say somehow he had this direct line to God, where every note was perfect. Every note was the note it had to be. And where he got this from, we don't know. But of course, it was this divine inspiration, and it was there because of his concentrated effort, his directing his attention in a particular way that stirred up genuine connection. So gradually the attraction of young Subodh for the master grows stronger and stronger naturally. And sometime after the passing away of the master, he leaves his parental home, he joins the band of monks. And as I say, Swami Vivekananda calls him Kuka, meaning child, and that's how he gets considered, because he had this childlike, innocent quality. Now, this quality comes with a number of effects. Firstly, a certain line of independence which says that I am reliant on my beloved God, I'm reliant on that, I don't need anything else. This comes out in Hari Prasan's life too. When Hari Prasan was ill, and Hari Prasan is actually appointed as eventually president of the Ramakrishna Math and Mission. He's there for 1 year. And in his health condition, he's persuaded, excuse me, they ask him to take some medicine, take some medical advice. He says, no, I have the best doctor in the world. They think it's a professional man, until they realize he's talking about the divine. Excuse me. Both of these people will work tirelessly for others. And when Swami Vivekananda comes back from the West, instead of going into seclusion, they both, in their own way, involve themselves in various capacities in the cause of the newly set up Ramakrishna Math and Mission. During the great epidemic of plague in Calcutta in 1899, the plague service of the Ramakrishna Mission was instituted, and Swami Subodhananda was one of those who worked hard for the relief of the helpless and panic-stricken people. Same thing with the famine that occurred in Orissa in 1908, and sacrificed themselves to such an extent. And Ramakrishna was the model for this. His love was incomparable. And Subodhananda would visit people who were particularly sick. One case was he visited somebody and nursed somebody who had smallpox at the risk of his own health. And so this is the recognition we find everywhere of a truly saintly personality who forgets their own welfare and acts for the welfare of all beings. And so in religious giving also, he spends himself without any reserve. During his tours, he had to undergo great inconvenience and to work very hard. And incidentally, it is Swami Subodhananda, along with Swami Shivananda, Mahapurush Maharaj, where we see him on film. The only film of the direct disciples of Ramakrishna only come about with a kind of handheld machine, and we see Shivananda walking in Berumat, but we see Swami Subodhananda with him. I particularly like Swami Subodhananda. Two incidents are there, but mainly when Ramakrishna was ill, Subodhananda recommended, what do you think? Tea. And people who know me understand my fondness for tea, like a kind of child's fondness. It was once that Subodhananda did a great favor to Swami Vivekananda. He said, ask me anything, I'll give you anything within my power to give. And Subodhananda answers, well, grant that for the rest of my life, I may always have my morning cup of tea. And certainly that's exactly what he got every day of his life. He was childlike in his simplicity, singularly unassuming in his behavior. And it's said, of course, in the Bible, except ye be converted and become as little children, you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. But rare are the persons who can combine in their lives the unsophisticated simplicity of a child with the high wisdom of a sage. And Swami Subodhananda would have had both. Sometimes when Swami Vivekananda would enter into a black mood, nobody could talk to him. It happens. Such a great personality. And it was only Subodhananda who could really come and speak to him. Once there was a brahmacharian who failed to get anything by begging. He was asked to go off. He had created some offense, and his punishment was go and beg your food, come back in the evening. After doing that the whole day, he didn't get anything except a quantity of fried grain, gram, and returned to the gate of the monastery in the evening. But he didn't dare enter the compound. Koka Maharaj came to know of his circumstances and interceded on his behalf, and the young member was excused. All the novices of the monastery had different kinds of work allotted to them, and often they didn't know how to do it. But Koka Maharaj on such occasions would come forward to help and guide them. So here we find a personality simple as a child, humble, somebody self-sacrificing, but intimately connected with his beloved. Even through physical sufferings, he was independent, and his spiritual conviction was never shaken. While he was on his deathbed, he said, "When I think of him, I become forgetful of all physical sufferings." And during this time, the Upanishads used to be read out to him, and while listening, he would warm up and of his own accord talk of various deep spiritual truths. Now I want to focus on Swami Vijnanananda. We've spoken a lot about Swami Subodhananda. Can we get anything from Hari Prasanna as well? First of all, he was an intellectual. He graduated as an engineer. For this reason, he was given a number of engineering jobs, including Swami Vivekananda had wanted a particular design of a temple at Belur, which stands today. We're all familiar with it. It represents really every single religion. It represents a church, it represents mosque, a Buddhist temple, and various Hindu archaeological temples, Rajasthan and so on and so forth. Combine the whole thing together, and you have this simple but very beautiful temple, which is there. Small thing in comparison, let's say, to big cathedrals. And fortunately, American devotees came up with enough money to do that. And it was Swami Vijnanananda that realized it and dedicated the original stone. He didn't see the fulfillment of it, but he at least was the primary engineer in laying out the land and so on and so forth, the bank along the Ganga and so on and so forth. He had a position, he was in a position of district engineer. And by the time the monastery at Baranagar had been founded, and the monastic disciple of the master often became his guests at different places. He hadn't joined the monastery at that point. He was there mainly to please his mother and to provide for them when his mother passed away. That commitment was gone. And in the year 1896, just shortly before Swami Vivekananda returns for the first time from his triumphant mission to the West, Hari Prasanna now joins the Brotherhood. This time the monastery had been moved to Alambazar. And Hari Prasanna was very devoted, of course, to his mother, and it was only for her sake that he had accepted the job. So Swami Vijnananda had in fact accompanied Swami Vivekananda on a trip to Rajputana and elsewhere. And just before the monastery was moved to its permanent home at Belur in 1899, it fell on him to construct Swami Vivekananda's vision for this beautiful temple. A great deal of fun is there. I'm just going to deviate and jump back to Swami Subodhananda, who was a reluctant speaker. He didn't rate himself very highly in public speaking, but Swami Vivekananda poked him a little bit. Now everybody has to have some experience of it. And so everybody joined to see how he would manage it and poke a little fun at him. And so as he was about to speak, there was a big earthquake. And of course, Swami Subodhananda gave an earth-shattering speech, was the fun. Talking of fun, which is a way of bonding, the brotherhood and sisterhood, if you will, the brotherhood of Ramakrishna's followers, and particularly the monastic bondage which was there, the fraternal bondage which was there. Swami Vijnanananda was supervising construction. We were working very hard, very thirsty, and Swami Vivekananda, in a sense of fun, sent him a little bit of liquid sherbet, very small amount. Vijnananda looked at it, saw the joke, quaffed it, and actually found that little bit of sherbet had quenched his entire thirst. How was it? Swami Vivekananda asks him. He says, well, despite the quantity, it actually satisfied my thirst very, very nicely. On another occasion, he and Swami Brahmananda had some wages, some bets. There was supposed to be some materials that had to be delivered by boat, and Brahmananda said, definitely it will come tonight, and by the morning it will be here. And Vijnananda said, I doubt it. Vijnananda woke up and went to where the boat would land, and saw no boat has come. And he goes back to sleep, quite satisfied. He's going to win the bet. And Brahmananda also gets up, and by that time the boat had arrived. He also goes to bed, quite satisfied. I won the wager. And then, of course, in the morning they meet. Vijnananda says very confidently, so you owe me. Brahmananda said, why? He said, well, the boat never arrived. No, you see, the boat did come. Ah, all right, never mind. I don't have any money. You pay it for me. That kind of thing. This kind of sense of humor that is there. It tells us also one thing, practical thing. If we are to deal with the life in front of us, we have to use one of the greatest tools that we have, that comes as a spontaneous bubbling of joy from the connection with the divine within. That is a sense of humor. And if life is not so serious, if life is interpreted as serious, we miss the idea that it is a divine game, a divine play, a play of waves that will come and also go. And we may as well dance to the music of life while we are here. Then we may as well enjoy it, and we may as well have some fun with it. So all of this happens, and Swami Vijnanananda, of course, he spends a lot of time in Allahabad. He goes and installs a club, a Brahmavadin club, and looking after youths and so on and so forth like that. But of course, amongst all this, he was a great scholar and also reticent to speak. So, but on occasion, when encouraged, he would open up and speak on the most profound spiritual topics. If you have a look at some of his teachings, he starts off like this. One should not ask for anything from God, but remain satisfied with whatever he's pleased to give. Even that opening teaching is extremely significant. One of the things we have to cultivate, according to Patanjali, going back to him again, is this idea of contentment. Contentment is equated to continuous gratitude. What we have, we should not take for granted. And we have a lot. Even if we don't have anything external, we have something, so to speak, internal. We have life to start with. We have breath. We have a heartbeat. We have eyes to see the beauty. You might say, there's that phrase, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, get it out with objects. No. If you have an eye for beauty, it's because You have a penetrating vision that sees the beauty of all beauties behind all beautiful things. Every flower is an example, is an expression, a manifestation of this eternal divine. Every sunrise, every sunset, every cloud, every breath, every pulsation, every eye that sees, every face that looks at you, peeps out at you, every animal that you see, every insect. You can go on for many, many hours together, identifying and repeating the divine glories. In the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we have an accumulation of divine glories. And they're there so that we can see these glories as expressions of the divine. And normally we become so self-absorbed, we miss all of these things. When we shift our attention and observe them, then we get a new outlook on life to start with. We have a practical way of dealing with things. We have a way of reframing all of these things. Instead of problems, we see opportunities. We see all the things that in the public domain is there for positive thinking people. From the 1960s onwards, there was positive thinking has been a great, great commercial teaching, but it's a kind of false positivity. It is saying, let us try to be positive. True positivity is the joy of seeing and aligning the attention with the glory of the divine continuously all the time. He is pleased to give. If you ask God for anything, He will give you a gift which is like a double-edged sword. Real welfare lies in using things properly. Wrong use of things brings misfortune. The most remarkable phenomenon is that all men, all animals desire to live forever. This shows the immortality of all created things. Yes, it is really so. The one that is within us is without beginning and without end, without birth or death. There's nothing like death there. Now, this is a different way of the Swamis Subodhananda saying the first step is viveka, discernment. This is exactly the same thing presented in a different language, in a different way. You are the complete master of your mind, he continues, and you can shape it as you like. We have to pause to reflect on that. We don't often think about that. You are the complete master of your mind. Don't think, well, I can't do this, my mind is the master. No, you are actually the master. Whether you exert your mastership or not, that's something different. You can shape it as you like. And the question is, you see, if you are to think differently, it starts off with, I'm the master of my own mind, and I can shape it as I want. If I haven't bothered to exert my mastership, then now is the time to adjust it. When the mind is completely under your control, it will have nothing to exist on except noble thoughts. And just as we know that pure and wholesome food is necessary for our physical existence, impure and contaminated food will only injure the body. So it's necessary to nourish the mind with noble thoughts and high ideals. That's how we should view it. Food for the mind, nourishment for the mind. Refusing to provide it with evil thoughts and bad associations, which are like poison to the mind. What do we mean by evil thoughts? This is not evil in the sense of outright immorality, but when we misidentify ourselves, our true self, with a kind of historical personality that has a history, that has certain characteristics and so on, an individuality like this. This comes out in modern societies, and we see it as a kind of commentary on misunderstanding. This is my body, I can do what I like with it. No more foolish thing and misplaced thing can we imagine. Who says it's your body? And we have the rights, human rights. Yes. Well, the Bhagavad Gita tells us, Krishna says, you have the right to work, that's all. It means you have the right to move, the right to sustain yourself, the right to action. That's all. But everything else comes from the Lord. Everything else comes from the divine. Our movement is only a small thing. The rest comes from the immortal Lord, who sustains and moves all the galaxies and creates rhythm and harmony throughout the entire existence. So he goes on to say, you are the master of your mind and you have to keep it pure. Your responsibility ends there. The rest is God's business. All we have to do is purify the mind, make sure that it's filled up. Every time there's a negative, fill up with the positive, please. And it is not trying to be positive. It is genuine positivism. It is a feeling, actually, an emotional feeling about the presence of the divine here in you. You see how these youngsters, how they kept company with the master, that transformed their whole lives. But everybody can keep company with the master. Everybody can keep company with the divine. What the Westerners, he goes on to say, well, even before that, he says, what you require is hope, faith, and patience. And gradually you will reach the goal. Such a simple statement is also so profound. What do we mean by hope? Hope doesn't mean I hope for something good in the future. It means there is hope. There is optimism. Faith, what is it? Absolute trust. Trust that things are well now. The other day we were studying Julian of Norwich and his statement, all will be well and all will be well and all manner of things will be well. In the midst of so many local, regional, political, etc. crises, Julian of Norwich was able to say, no, all will be well. In the midst of immense sickness and suffering, all will be well, and all will be well. All manner of things will be well. Very famous statement. Only a prolonged look at him will wash away all the sins and sorrows of your heart. A prolonged look at him. If you have a picture, you'll prolonged look at him. If you say, I can't do any spiritual practice, I can't think of what to do, sit there and gaze at his picture or her picture, whatever your Ishtadeva is. Gaze at that. And soon that gazing, external gazing, will be an internal gazing. And very soon that internal gazing will be an internal feeling. And when that internal feeling is there, the internal presence is there. And that internal presence will be a revealing presence that manifests the fullness from within. Subodhananda had this vision granted by Swami Vivekananda's Ramakrishna's touch, and that was a vision of all the deities, all the forms of God that he had experienced, and all of them appearing and all of them consolidated into oneness, and then into this glorious light. And from there, this particular Ishtadevata coming out from this. Don't find fault with others, Vijnanananda goes on to say. Rather look at your own faults as an echo of what the Divine Mother is saying. Once, he says, while I was at Belur, a gentleman came and expressed his regret that we had not married and had renounced the world. By all sorts of arguments, he demonstrated that our Supreme Guru, Shiva, was also married. Owing to ignorance, man tries to support his views with numerous intellectual arguments, and the result is philosophizing. Even so, even when people are given spiritual direction, they will find some kind of intellectual argument that will superficially oppose it. But he gets over all of these once he is blessed with true insight. The Master used to say, the world is a bad place and you should renounce it. In a sense, there was no argument behind it because he knew that no one can get over his unhappiness without renouncing the world. That is, without revaluing the world and without seeing the reality that is sitting behind. And once it's realized that a thing is not permanent, the best thing is to discard it. There's no question. If it's not providing what you want from it, that is the happiness. Everyone is looking for it. Unmitigated, unending happiness. And so he goes on like this in his teaching. These two great souls, these two lights, as it were, that shone from the central light, which we call Ramakrishna. So just to summarize a little bit why we study these lives in particular. First of all, different people, different approaches. We see the great artistic skill of a teacher like Ramakrishna, how he deals with two people in a different way and immediately illumines them by his love and his positive attitude. And his love is the central theme. So if we were to learn anything, it is love. Love is the central virtue, and Ramakrishna experiences it and gives it to us. And all these wonderful disciples are the embodiments of this love. And so we get insight into Ramakrishna and his methodology for teaching and his love. And we have models of saintly lives when we study these. And their teachings, which say the same thing, but approach things in a different way. There are so many different now teachers, if you will, on YouTube and so on and so forth, all in their own way, teaching maybe the same thing. And so we catch what we feel appeals to us. One person's way of expressing it may not appeal to everybody. Another person's may appeal to others. It just depends. Since our ignorance is so profound and so deep, we need 1,000 tools. We need prayer, we need japa, we need meditation. We need reading of Holy Scriptures. We need to go into solitude from time to time. We need holy company. All of these things we require. And these are all available as tools. And we have a central philosophy that has a range of tools that we can use. The Vedanta philosophy is not about non-dualism. It incorporates a dualistic approach, as well as seeing the whole world as a manifestation of this one, as well as this oneness. And this philosophical answers that come from all of these three culminate actually in a non-dualistic approach. We have all these tools at our disposal. And so if we want to elevate the mind, coming back to your central question, we have to emulate these great personalities. And of course, we intensify our spiritual practice, keeping company to the extent that it becomes a second nature to us. So that when we are beset by so-called daily problems, we're easily able to feel them in the same way as a professional tennis person is able to feel the most difficult shots, or a cricket player is able to do the same thing, or a rugby player is able to counter any opposition through strategy, through skill, through enthusiasm, through energy, and through a sense of sportsmanship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.